Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are tackling a topic that has practically taken over the headlines, and if you're anything like me, probably your group chats too. We're talking about UPI payment fees. You probably use UPI multiple times a day for, well, literally everything, from your morning coffee to paying your rent. So when news broke that the government might actually allow fees on UPI payments, a lot of people naturally started checking their wallets. The big panic was, wait, is this totally free, seamless digital infrastructure about to start costing me money? Today, we are going to unpack exactly what the source material tells us, break down the actual numbers, and figure out what this really means for you.
So, let's just get right to the elephant in the room. Are you, the consumer, suddenly going to be hit with a charge every single time you scan a QR code or send money to a friend? Look, the anxiety here is completely understandable. UPI has entirely revolutionized how we handle our money, mostly because it's fast, it's incredibly convenient, and, most importantly, it's free. But to answer this question accurately, we really need to step away from all that social media panic and look directly at the hard facts of the government's proposal. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The proposed UPI fee. 2. Understanding the MDR. 3. The 5% reality. 4. Credit cards versus UPI. And 5. The consumer bottom line.
Starting right off with Section 1, the proposed UPI fee, breaking down the headlines.
All right, here is the absolute core fact drawn straight from the reports. The government is likely to allow a levy of 0.25% to 0.4% as a charge on UPI payments. But, and this is a massive but, there are very strict conditions here. This proposed fee applies specifically to transactions above 2,000 rupees and strictly to payments made to businesses. That distinction is absolutely crucial. The proposal explicitly keeps payments made by one person to another completely outside of this ambit. So transferring money to your family or, splitting a dinner bill with a friend, that remains totally untouched by this specific proposal.
So you might be wondering, how is this actually happening legally? Well, this mechanism was put into motion through the Taxation and Other Laws Amendment Bill, which was moved by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Essentially, this bill seeks to remove the existing bar that prevents banks and payment service providers from levying fees on notified electronic payment modes. Now, it is very, very important to note here that government officials have stated there's currently no decision on exactly when this proposal will be implemented. It's a legal framework being put into place, not an immediate switch being flipped today.
Moving on to Section 2, understanding the MDR, the hidden mechanic.
You're going to hear the acronym MDR thrown around a lot in this conversation. It stands for Merchant Discount Rate. By definition, the MDR is a fee or charge levied on payments made to businesses by banks or payment service providers. Let's demystify this a bit. MDR is traditionally a business-side fee. It's what a merchant pays to their bank for the privilege and the convenience of processing a digital transaction. This is not designed as a direct tax on you, the consumer standing at the checkout counter. It's literally just a cost of doing business for the merchant who's accepting your digital payment.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 5% reality, volume versus value. Now, what's really interesting about the official government estimates is what that 2,000 rupee floor actually means in practice. A staggering 95% of all UPI transactions fall under that limit. This means that 95% of the time someone uses UPI, that transaction is completely immune to this proposed merchant discount rate. The proposed fee only targets that tiny 5% slice of transaction volume that sits above the 2,000 rupee mark. For the vast majority of everyday UPI usage, it is strictly business as usual.
But why even bother targeting just 5% of transactions? Well, here's the flip side. That tiny 5% slice of volume actually accounts for a massive 65% of the total transaction value flowing through the entire UPI network. The high-value payments made to businesses are heavily concentrated in that top 5%. It's a classic case of volume versus value. The government's proposal is surgically aimed at the heavy-hitting value transactions, not your everyday micropayments.
To really appreciate why banks are looking so closely at these numbers, we need to understand the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the UPI system. In just the month of July alone, there were 23.7 billion UPI transactions recorded. Just let that sink in for a second. 23.7 billion digital handshakes in a single month. The infrastructure required to process, secure, and settle that many transactions instantly without crashing is monumental. And if you look at the actual monetary value attached to those 23.7 billion transactions from July, it was pegged at a staggering 29.9 lakh crore rupees.
Moving nearly 30 lakh crore rupees instantly and safely costs a lot of money. We're talking servers, cybersecurity, customer support, network maintenance. The whole shebang requires massive, ongoing investment. This staggering value is exactly why banks and payment providers are seeking ways to cover their infrastructure and operational costs through mechanisms like this proposed MDR.
Let's move over to Section 4, Credit Cards versus UPI, contextualizing the cost.
Let's build some context by looking at the cards you probably already carry in your wallet. At present, credit and debit cards already come with MDRs, even if most merchants choose not to pass that fee directly on to you. If we compare them, the proposed UPI MDR is between 0.25% and 0.4%. Now contrast that to debit cards. For transactions up to 20 lakh rupees, the cap is 0.4%, and for higher values, it's up to 0.9%. In credit cards, the MDR fee there isn't strictly regulated and can be as high as 3% of the transaction value. So when you view the proposed UPI fee side by side with the fees merchants already pay for card processing, the UPI proposal is actually on the much lower end of the spectrum. Furthermore, an industry source noted something really interesting regarding how high these fees could realistically go. They stated, and I quote, "Unlike credit cards, there is no funding cost involved, so it makes sense to have a ceiling once the costs are covered." Think about it. Because UPI is a direct bank-to-bank transfer of money you already have in your account, unlike a credit card where a bank is literally lending you money for 30 days, the underlying costs are lower. Because of this, industry insiders believe the government will likely impose a firm ceiling on the absolute maximum amount that can be charged for a UPI transaction, which prevents costs from spiraling out of control for larger purchases.
Finally, Section 5, the consumer bottom line, how this actually affects you.
So the crucial point is captured perfectly in this statement from a government official. They explicitly stated, even if implemented, 95% of the transactions will not face the merchant discount rate. The vast, overwhelming majority of your daily digital interactions are going to remain completely untouched and completely free. The whole panic that every single scan of a QR code will cost you money, it's simply not supported by the facts of this proposal.
To make this even more concrete, official estimates highlight specific exemptions that protect everyday purchases. As we mentioned earlier, person-to-person payments are totally exempt. But even when paying businesses, the official stance is that this policy is unlikely to impact your daily essentials. We're talking things like buying milk, picking up vegetables, your standard grocery run, or paying for an auto or taxi ride. Those are expected to either be strictly exempt or naturally fall well below that 2,000 rupee threshold anyway. Your everyday cost of living is for sure not designed to get more expensive because of this policy.
But what about that final loophole, right? If you make a purchase over 2,000 rupees at a store, is the merchant just going to quietly tack that 0.25% fee onto your final bill? According to government officials, not necessarily. An official noted that not all businesses are going to pass on the fees, which will be a small amount. Much like how a lot of merchants currently just absorb the 1% to 3% hit when you use a credit card just to secure your business, many will likely absorb this much smaller UPI fee as a basic cost of offering a convenient payment method to their customers.
Which brings us to a really fascinating final thought. The UPI network is a marvel of modern technology. It handles billions of transactions and moves trillions of rupees flawlessly. But as this digital payment infrastructure continues to scale up globally, it leaves us with a huge question. As these systems grow, who should ultimately foot the bill for maintaining them? Is it the banks who provide the tech, the merchants who benefit from the extra sales, or the consumers who enjoy all the convenience? It's a debate that is really just beginning, and this proposed MDR is simply the first chapter. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking those great questions, and I will see you next time.